your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. I'm going to start off talking about the shooting in Minneapolis, and I want to put it into perspective here. Let me say this: the death of I believe her name is Renee Nicole Good. It is tragic, but it is justified. And frankly, I would have shot her too. I don't say that to sound hyperbolic. I don't say that to sound mean. It was a very tragic, sad, and unnecessary ending. But guys, I'm just going to be straight with you, and I've said it plenty of times on radio before. If you comply, you won't die. This young lady was a part of a group, a social injustice group, if you will, that a WICE, an ICE watch group that was just total nonsense, and she put herself in harm's way for no reason. And I'm sorry, the cop was well within his rights, or the ICE agent was well within his rights to shoot her. There's a lot of people, him and Han, both on the left and the right, to be frank with you. And this is one of the things, one of the areas in which, for whatever reason, God has given me expertise. Actually, I know the reason. But I've been a victim of two crimes, two violent crimes. And I've shared this before on air. And so you have some people, perhaps on the left, you'll hear them trying their best. And we're going to play video for you, trying their best, excuse me, to scapegoat to scapegoat Renee Nicole Good, the woman that literally tried to run over an ICE agent. And then you'll have some people on the right saying, and perhaps wisely so, hey, listen, don't rush to judgment. Let's make sure that this thing is investigated. And for I guess you should say that to be cautious. And I understand that and I totally get that, especially if you're a responsible news organization, if you're a lawyer, completely get that. I can come at this from a different perspective as a person that's been literally the victim of two violent crimes. And I can tell you, and someone sadly that was involved in crime myself before God radically changed my life. And I can tell you that that officer, for all of you people that are second guessing, I would have done the same thing. You don't realize how fast time flies. We all live our day-to-day lives. We're blessed, most of us, where we don't ever have to experience crime, or we live in areas where crime isn't as big of a deal, or we've never been the victim of a crime. And that is a great thing. And I pray to God that you always stay safe. But the reason why I always give law enforcement officers the benefit of the doubt until I hear or see something completely different or contrary, or something that it's completely damning evidence wise, I give them the benefit of the doubt. Why? Because they are in harm's way every day. Protesters can go out and say, oh, you can shoot a person in the leg, you didn't have to shoot there. They can second guess all day, but what they'll never experience, most of them, is that millisecond of time where you have to decide life or death, and it's that quick. I'm talking to you. I mean, you're living your average, normal, everyday life, and then all of a sudden, that quick, something happens, and you have to make a decision that quick. 99.5% of people out here won't be able to make or react to a situation like that. In my mind, because I've been a victim of crime, I don't go anywhere without checking exit doors. If I eat certain places, I want to be setting a certain way so that I could see anything that may be happening. And I'm always looking at exits so that I can get myself and my family out. God forbid something crazy pops off anywhere that I may go. That's how I think now. But most people don't think like that. But police officers, law enforcement, military men are trained to think like that, and far above than what I could ever imagine, quite frankly. So I would have shot her too. And I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm not saying this to be hyperbolic. I'm not saying this, for clicks. I'm saying this because when your life is on the line, you're going to fight. Maybe you're going to run. I'm going to, based on my own experience, I fought in both cases. I tried to run in one case, couldn't, and couldn't help but to fight. But, but that's me. And that's not everybody. But our law enforcement officers are trained to take on the worst of the worst. And I understand that this young lady, and we'll go through some of her history, and I say young lady, 37 years old. I understand. I understand that she isn't the worst of the worst. She has a different political view, and that's fine. But what you don't do is you don't block the roads trying to deter ICE agents from doing their duty, and that's law enforcement. Guys, you know what sets America apart from the rest of the world? Look at what's happening in Venezuela. And listen, we got a jam packed show for you today. I'm going to go through a lot of stuff. Obviously, you've got the shootings. President Trump is out with a new plan for housing. Obviously, you have the capture or the taking of these oil tankers in Venezuela, off the coast of Venezuela. I mean, we'll talk about all of those things and more. I got notes in front of me. Individual property rights. I'm going to go back to this lady Che Weaver that Ma'am Danny hired, his tenant pick, whoever, whatever that particular title is. Ma'am Danny himself is out with some new stuff, commenting on the Minneapolis case. Also, $4.5 billion has now been allocated by Kathy Hochul, the nanny of New York, for child care. That state is going to go bankrupt. It's going to go absolutely bankrupt. More people are going to flee that state, so be ready for that. I think I mentioned Trump's housing affordability plan. He wants to in his housing plan, he wants to ban investors, institutional investors, hedge funds from buying homes. So we're going to get into all of that and more. I'm chomping at the bit. I don't normally say that to get to this, so forgive me if I feel a little choppy here. But I'm chomping at the bit to get to this story of Minneapolis, and obviously it is the story that has consumed the news yesterday and today as well. And there's actually plenty of big news out there as well. Um, that's just insane. I mean, Trump has disengaged from several UN treaties. We'll talk about that. Nobody's talking about that. It's absolutely insane. I want to talk about property rights too, because guys, we need to run away from socialism. Socialism isn't a good thing. It isn't cool. It isn't compassionate. It's really mean. It's really mean. The idea of collective the collective that Mandani said, the warmth of collectivism. The only thing warm about collectivism is probably the fact that it feels makes you feel like crap when you live through it. Just ask the people of Venezuela that went from being the most prosperous country in South America to literally eating their pets and eating out of garbage cans. I mean, ask them about it. I mean, it's absolutely insane where we've come, and to come to a place where you literally have American citizens that aren't concerned about criminals that are invading their country, invading their neighborhoods, and they're saying we're a diverse city, we're a sanctuary city, like they're saying in Minneapolis and all these other places. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of these illegal alien criminals are doing damage to this, doing damage to these communities. But more than that, what I don't want to do is I don't want to make the mistake. And I have to be careful myself here because I want to get to this Minneapolis story, but I also want to make sure that we never lose sight of the first Minneapolis story that the left wants us to be distracted by, and that's the Minnesota fraud. And that is a much bigger story than Renee Goods. And I know the left wants to make her a George Floyd. She will never rise to the level of a George Floyd. And again, I'm not saying that to be mean. There's just too many black people that aren't going to lift her up like they would a George Floyd. They're simply not going to do it. So she will never be a George Floyd. And people are tired of this stuff. People are sick of this stuff. People are tired of the writing. I think there's a select few of crazies within the Democrat Party that are willing to go out. There's a lot of organizations that are willing to go out and riot and protest and do whatever else they have to do for the Democrat Party so that they can stay in power, so that they can continue getting paid. But this nonsense, I think it's people are just tired of it, frankly. People are tired of it. I know you're tired of it. Um, it's so annoying. It's so owed to me. Sadly, it's all the left has, and so they're going to double down on it. But what I don't want to escape, what I don't want the left to distract from, is the fact that the state of Minnesota, under the leadership of Governor Tim Walz, under the leadership Minneapolis of this mayor Jacob Fry, I believe he may be, and there's some news that broke on him as well, where his wife was involved in a law firm that worked with the Feed Our Future people and all this kind of stuff. There's no telling how corrupt that state and that city is with the leadership that they have in place. But the DOJ is on the ground. They're investigating not only the Somali community, but some of these political leaders. And I'm hoping that it ends up with Governor Tim Walz or Mayor Jacob Fry in handcuffs. And I'm not saying that because they're Democrats. I say that because they're completely and utterly corrupt. It is so obvious. You cannot have that much fraud going on in your state, let alone your city, and not know about it. Not know about it. That's insane. So we're going to play some video clips. There was a hearing yesterday, an oversight hearing, where they were questioning some people, some state legislators that are from Minnesota. One radical seeming attorney from the left as well on this Minnesota fraud. He was obviously he's a resident of Minnesota too. So I want to get to all of that, and then again, so much news that has happened today as well. I want to make sure that we get to. So we'll do all of that, but first and foremost, I want you to understand, do not let this shooting distract from the biggest story in Minnesota, and that is the fraud scheme that is continuously being uncovered there. You're listening to the Carl Jackson Show. Hey, welcome to the program, guys. Please subscribe wherever you go to get your podcast. The Carl Jackson Show, Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Feel free to leave comments. If I can answer some of them during the break or questions, if I can answer any during the break, I will try my best to do so. And I appreciate you guys tuning in. All right, let's I'll reset this and let's get back to this, Gabe. And we're gonna go into some video, and we're gonna talk about property rights as well. I'm gonna talk about it from a Christian perspective, a biblical perspective. Oh, Carl, you're gonna get all religious on me? Well, yeah, kind of, sort of, but not really. We live in a Judeo-Christian nation. We live in a Christian nation that was built upon Judeo-Christian values. And that means we're not perfect, right? But the principles that we subscribe to are really good principles. They're great principles. They are perfect principles, and they work. And those principles are written on our hearts. Frankly, they're called the Ten Commandments, and that's the code in which we live by. That's the code in which our laws are derived. So I'm going to talk about property rights based upon that code. And I'm going to battle this chick, Che Weaver or C Weaver, whatever her name is, CEA Weaver. I'm not saying that to be dismissive. I just really don't know how you pronounce her name, but it turns out she's another Nepo baby. Her mother is a professor at Vanderbilt, owns a home in Tennessee worth $1.6 million. And so it seems like these Nepo babies, like herself and Che Weaver, and Ma'am Danny, they're really into communism. These people that are born with silver spoons in their mouths, it's absolutely fascinating to me, almost as if they haven't had to work in the real world. They haven't had to struggle themselves, but they feel guilty about all the wealth that they have and being able to be taken care of. And so they're going to make us feel the pain for it, right? In the name of compassion, they're going to try to do something good for us, make us pay for all of their bad mistakes. It's the craziest thing. Frankly, I don't think Nepo babies should be should be put in power unless they have some serious real experience with success when it comes to business. All right, so let's play a couple of video clips for you. First off, I want to start with this. I want to start with cut number 47, and the reason why I'm starting with cut number 47. What's that? Oh, yeah, I thought I did. Okay, never mind. Okay. So, all right, guys. So I've been talking to you. We haven't started rolling yet. So now we're gonna we're gonna start rolling. All right. So I'm thinking I started the segment. I didn't. Yes, I'm ready. All right, guys. So you got a little live action behind the scenes for those of you that were tuning in. I want to go straight to cut number 47, if you will, Gabe, because honestly, like I was saying before the break, this is a major distraction. I'm not trying to minimize what happened to Renee Nicole Goods, nor am I wanting to minimize what the officer had to live through. And frankly, as I stated during the first segment of the program, I would have shot Renee Goods too. I'm not. I'm just a listen, guys. I'm just a blue collar, average, everyday American. I hope and pray that I don't necessarily stay that way, at least financially, but that's who I am, you know. And I grew up. I grew up probably lower middle class. neighborhood is what it would be considered. Probably different now since it's in LA and real estate is just absolutely insane out there. But I grew up in LA where I wasn't this rich kid. We didn't grow up with money. Not that we necessarily knew, because we grew up in, I think, a decent home. Even though my father was a disciplinarian, had a great mom. She died when I was really young. And my dad took care of us along with the help of my big sister and so on. And that's just how I grew up. And we didn't grow up with a lot of stuff, but we grew up with some good friends. We grew up in a good church, albeit it was a cult at the time. We didn't realize that, but nonetheless, it was the Worldwide Church of God. But it was a great community, and so I just grew up a little. I grew up a little different. I'm just an ordinary guy. What I think just a ungodly amount of common sense. I mean, let's be real, Gabe. The Lord has blessed me with so much common sense. It's insane. Sometimes I feel guilty, like I should probably share it more with more Americans, and so perhaps that's why that's why I'm podcasting. But anyway, let's go with cut number 47 because I don't want to lose what's really happening in Minnesota. And again, I'm going to get into the details of who this young lady was and what she was a part of. And I don't want to demonize her. That's certainly not the case. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend like she was some innocent bystander. I think she was doing something that she had no business doing, and frankly, something, in my opinion, not in my opinion, that's illegal. I mean, she should not be interfering in law enforcement duties. And apparently, her lover, her partner, begged her or made her go out that day. And then Renee Nicole Good ends up leading the charge, if you will. And so her lover says it's not my fault after she was justifiably shot. And anyone out there that's saying, "Oh, yeah, he could have done this," he could have. I know you've never been a part of a violent situation. I know you've never been because it's just really silly to say that when a car is coming at you, straight at you. Oh, she wasn't. She was trying to turn. She was trying to do this. She was trying to do that. You think somebody in front of a car has time to figure out in a millisecond that quick what the thought of the person is behind that mass metal weapon with rubber tires is up to, what they're thinking, what their feelings are at the time? No, it's fight or flight. It's survival at that time. So that's why I think a lot of the punditry on the left, particularly, but even some on the right, it's very cautious and it's very naive. I would have shot her too. Let's play cut number 47.
IRS called criminal investigations, and these men and women,
Okay,
they are cool cats.
Okay, we may have. I did. I hope that played on your end. It did not play on my end, Gabe. It froze. So I don't know if it froze on your end. Let's run that again, if you guys don't mind.
It's IRS called criminal investigations, and these men and women, they are cool cats. They can take apart a balance sheet, and they can knock down a door and arrest someone. Like, they go out on patrols, they can make arrests. It's this very interesting hybrid force, about 2,500 of them, and they led the charge here. So it was IRS CIs who uncovered the initial fraud and the prosecutions. So it's with that group, with other groups at IRS, and with the powers of the Treasury to track where the money came from, where it's going. We saw this very unsettling news yesterday that many people involved here with the administration of these programs have tried to go back and they recreate documents, change documents, and we're not going to have that. We are going to hold people accountable. We're going to press this to the full extent possible. And like I said, I think that this may just be, it's a cold day outside, so this could be the tip of the iceberg here in Minnesota, but it's probably may not be as prevalent, but the dollars may be bigger and larger in other states. And just to put this in perspective for American taxpayers, for American families, the GAO, the General Accounting Office, believes that there is somewhere between 3 and 600 billion of annual fraud, roughly 10% of government spending that disappears due to fraud. If we can recapture that, that is 1 to 2% of GDP.
Okay, 1 to 2% of GDP, which is fraud that is just going annually. I mean, that's absolutely insane. And frankly, I think this is the story. I believe the Democrat Party are hoping and praying for another George Floyd situation, right? That's what they're hoping for. That's the only way that Democrats can win elections, in my opinion. It isn't based on policy. It isn't based on solutions. If you Americans have very short memories, and this is very frustrating for me as we go through election cycles. But all you have to do is consider the COVID lockdowns of 2020 and of from the time that Biden got into office, so 2021 and thereafter. Obviously, you had the initial lockdown of the country a couple of weeks. Everybody didn't know, nobody knew what this COVID-19 was, and then Trump said, "Let's open back up." You had people like DeSantis, you had Greg Abbott, you had forgive me, I forget. I believe it was Governor Kim Reynolds of Iowa. These governors opened up quickly and went ahead and pressed on with life. I think there was another, if I recall correctly, another Republican, and other Republicans began opening up their states and stuff like that. But Democrats, under the leadership of Joe Biden and the auto pen, constantly try to take away your liberties. Inflation was absolutely insane. Because of the federal spending. We had already Trump had already spent money in 2020, giving people basically a government handout as a result of COVID. And then Biden comes in when COVID has virtually run its course and decides to lock people down again, and then to offer more stimulus, which just sent inflation skyrocketing. And then they told us where we could go, where we can eat, what jobs we can have, and what jobs we shouldn't, what vaccines we have to take, or we're not allowed to do that. That was the Democrat Party. That is the Democrat Party. They think they know better than you. Hence, Ma'am Danny in New York, which we'll get to momentarily. But this lady, Renee Nicole Good, I was reading an article earlier from the New York Post. Let me see if I can bring that up real quick. And again, it's not my goal to try to demonize the lady. But I got to be honest with you. The more that I've read about her, she does seem a bit troubled, and I'm not even convinced. I'm going to say something I know it's going to get me in a lot of trouble. I'm not convinced she was the greatest mom. Sadly, she had gone through some tragic events, and I'm sure she's a sweetheart of a person. But I'm sorry, you don't do stuff like that. Let me just read some from the New York Post. There's another column that I have right in front of me from the Wall Street Journal as well, but this one from the New York Post. Renee Nicole Good was a Minneapolis ICE watch warrior who trained to resist feds before the shooting. So she was an ICE watch warrior. Now keep in mind the people that ICE were arresting are rapists, murderers. That's who they were going after in Minneapolis, as well as the fraudsters. This isn't about attacking the Somali community. It isn't the goal of the DOJ or the Trump administration to attack the Somali community, but you attack the fraud. And if the vast majority of the fraud is within the Somali community, hey, you go where the crime is. I mean, it's really as simple as that. And these people want to make it a racial issue. It is not a racial issue. It is about crime. It is about ending crime. And I'm sorry, but these people they're obviously ill-informed or uninformed, and they're brainwashed because they're sitting there trying to hurt the law enforcement agents that just want to actually help them and help their communities and make their community safer. It isn't even just about illegal immigration, even though I'm completely okay with that. It's about getting the criminal element out first so they're not hurting your community. And you have people like Renee Nicole Good, who, again, I'm sure she was a lovely person to all of her friends, but she was also a radical that did a very, very stupid and dangerous thing. And sadly, she paid the ultimate price for what? For nothing. For nothing. because the ICE agents are going to continue to do their job, and they need to do their job. We'll be back. You're listening to the Carl Jackson Show. Back in a moment. All right, let me make some quick mentions here. Um, Hello, everyone. Please follow me all things social media at Carl Jackson Show, at the Carl Jackson Show, X, Instagram, and Facebook. Por favor, as we like to say. And I don't know where, Gabe. I guess when you're from LA originally, you can say you say por favor a lot, even if you're black. All right, we we can we can start this thing back up. I'm glad you guys are tuning in to the program. Really appreciate you being out there. All right, let's roll, por favor. All right, before we get back to the big story, obviously the big story is still the Minneapolis shooting. There has been some news that broke on a another shooting. I'll get to momentarily. I can pull it up on my phone. Apparently, it looks like some custom CBP officers may have been involved in a shooting on the West Coast. So I'll look into that and see what's going on there. But these are a couple of cool things that I just want to bring to your attention. So, President Trump is moving to stop investment firms from buying single family homes. So, this is something that, frankly, I've talked about before. Charlie Kirk championed this big time, and I think it was a smart play. But this is one of the things that President Trump is doing. So, basically, what he's doing is these institutional investment firms, these hedge funds like BlackRock, so on, etc. What he wants to do is stop them from investing in single family homes, major institutional investors, and that is defined as any company or any firm that buys 100 or more single family homes. So you have a lot of these investment companies that are scooping these homes up off the market, and they can clean them up because they've got tons of money. They can flip them, which increases the value of properties nearby, obviously, which for neighbors, that's a good thing. But for first time home buyers, that's probably a horrible thing, or that is a horrible thing because they're pricing them out of the market. So Trump wants to deal with that to bring down the cost of housing. Some other things that Trump is doing that I think the Trump administration should be talking about and mentioning is illegal immigration. Guys, I realize some people may be neighbors, some people may be friends, and I don't want to see anybody have to go through some miserable process of being deported. But the truth of the matter is, we just can't have people coming into the country illegally because we can't afford it. And then when people don't assimilate, it causes more division in the country. A lot of people are wondering, when are we ever going to get past this divide? And frankly, I think as long as the left knows they have illegals around to use as pawns to make their other voters mad, we'll never get past the division because the Democrat Party, they don't have solutions. All they offer you is anger. That's all they offer you. Anger. Oh, hate this person. What else? What else do they have to offer? Seriously, they don't have anything to offer. They don't have solutions. Their policies don't work. The states that they run are trash. They're high crime. They'll lie to you and say, "Well, listen, red states have high crime too. Look at this, this city." And then it turns out the cities that they're talking about happen to be the one city or two in a state that are overwhelmingly run by Democrats. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. But so what Trump is moving to do again, stop these hedge funds from buying up single family homes. But also, you guys know, or you may know, that the demand in the rental market is made up 2/3 of it by illegal aliens. Joe Biden and the Democrat Party flooded so many illegal aliens into the United States of America during his pregnancy. Do you understand that you might be competing for rent? You're wondering why your rent is so high? You might be competing for rent prices against illegal aliens wherever you may be at. They're driving up the cost because they're driving up the demand so landlords can say, hey, we're going to boost the rent. 2/3 of the rental demand is from illegal aliens. So I think the Trump administration, along with saying we're going to cut this nonsense out of these major hedge funds just buying up single family homes, and what we're doing is making sure illegal aliens cannot legally rent. They cannot be the sole renter, right? They can't be the home buyer. If you live with somebody, a daughter, or son, or something, I understand that unless there's a deportation process going on. I get that happening, but I don't get illegal aliens being the sole person on the mortgage or the sole renter. I don't think that should be allowed in the United States of America. No other country. We're the only country dumb enough to do this stuff. We talk about how hateful America is, how systemically racist, yet we're the only country that's dumb enough to do stuff like this. It's absolutely insane to me. So that's one piece of news. You have the Maha piece of news where the food pyramid has basically been flipped upside down. If we could play cut number 35 real quick, Gabe, about that. Actually, we'll play the video, and I'll just give you a short synopsis of what took place today. Because basically, the government, just understand that the government they don't always have your best interests at heart. People assume that government knows better. Government are people that other people elect, and all you have to do is look at your neighbor, and some of your neighbors may be smart, beautiful, godly people, and some of your neighbors are crazy as hell, and they're voting for people that are crazy as all get out and dumb as all get out, and they're sending them to Washington, D.C., or they're sending them to your state capital, or they're working inside of government. Just because they work in government doesn't mean they're smarter than anybody else. It's that illusion of the name of government, the government agency. Oh, we got to listen to them. They've got to be smarter than everyone outside of the government, when in fact, it's probably a lot of nepotism going on where people are hiring their children, they're hiring their friends and homies and so on, etc. And I'm not saying there aren't a lot of smart people in government. There are. But guess what? There's a lot more smarter people outside of government. Just because government should never be as big as the private sector. Let's go to cut number 35 real quick, Gabe, before we circle back to the Minnesota fraud, and as well as the shooting of Renee Nicole Good, who was justifiably shot. And I will stand on that. Cut number 35, please, Gabe. The Maha moment.
Today marks a decisive change in federal nutrition policy, made possible by President Trump's leadership and the work of Maha moms and public health advocates who demanded reform.
All right, so
today, in accordance with President Trump.
Okay, let's try 36. Okay, so all right, so that was cut number 35.
Today marks a decisive change in federal nutrition policy, made possible by President Trump's leadership and the work of Maha moms and public health advocates who demanded reform. Today, in accordance with President Trump's directive, Brooke and I will release the dietary guidelines for Americans 2025 to 2030, the most significant reset of federal nutrition policy in history. These guidelines replace corporate-driven assumptions with common sense goals and gold standard scientific integrity. These new guidelines will revolutionize our nation's food culture and make America healthy again. For decades, Americans have grown sicker while healthcare costs have soared. The reason is clear. The hard truth is that our government has been lying to us to protect corporate profit-taking, telling us that these food-like substances were beneficial to public health. Federal policy promoted and subsidized highly processed foods and refined carbohydrates and turned a blind eye to the disastrous consequences. Today, the lies stop. The new guidelines recognize that whole, nutrient-dense food is the most effective path to better health and lower healthcare costs. Protein and healthy fats are essential and were wrongly discouraged in prior dietary guidelines. We are ending the war on saturated fats. Diets rich in vegetables and fruits reduce disease, risk more effectively than many drugs. Whole grains outperform refined carbohydrates. Added sugars, especially sugar sweetened beverages, drive metabolic disease, and today our government declares war on added sugar. Highly processed foods loaded with additives, added sugar, and excess salt damage health and should be avoided. As Secretary of Health and Human Services, my message is clear: eat real food.
Let's leave it
Nothing
there.
matters more for
So I mean, so
healthcare outcomes.
that's basically the gist of it. It's eat real food. There's a few things that they did. They inverted the food pyramid. Basically, the old food pyramid was phased out in the early 2000s. Then they started showing you the dinner plate. Half of that was covered with carbohydrates. They're flipping that on its head. And now with with the carbohydrate heavy breads, I'm reading for Epic Times from Epic Times, and grains are at the base. Tapering to meats, dairy products, and saturated fats were at the top. Well, that's being flipped on its head. All right. Also, so these new guidelines are informed. This is according to RFK. By the best and most reliable research on health and nutrition, particularly as it relates to the role of our diets and the prevalence of chronic disease in the country. Now, if we could just work on abortion, that would be great. All right, same foods again, new balance. The guidelines encourage eating many of the same foods, such as nutrient dense vegetables, fresh fruits, protein rich meats, nuts, and nuts and whole grains. Also, they went from limiting stuff to avoiding stuff. So the new guidelines take a stronger stand against foods that are overconsumed, particularly sugar. So anyway, we'll get into a little more detail, not much, after the break. But I do want to talk about this a little more and then circle back to Minnesota, the Minnesota fraud, and the Minnesota shooting. All of that and more coming up on the Carl Jackson Show. Okay. Sorry. I am. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Please follow me all things social media, por favor. X, Instagram, and Facebook at Carl Jackson Show, at the Carl Jackson Show. We would certainly appreciate that. Forgive me because I am scrolling through news as we sit here. So let me see what's popping. Something that I may or may not have missed. Where am I going here? Website. Only time will tell. U.S. works plan to dominate the Venezuela oil fell swoop. And Florida again that top. Okay. All right. We can get back. All right, we can get back to it, Gabe. I got a lot of videos that I'm going to be playing, so brace yourselves for this particular. Yeah. All right. All right. So as I was saying before the break, just real quick, hitting this new, um, inverted dietary plan, or the pyramid, the food pyramid. Again, basically same foods, new balance is or what RFK Jr. was saying, just eat real foods. And again, I mean, we're taught to trust government, but as Americans, we should be skeptical of government. Even Republican government, Democrat government, we should be skeptical of all government. You always go back to the Constitution. You always go back to individual rights. I'll get to property rights momentarily, because this is why individual rights are so important. When you hear the term collectivism, especially the warmth of collectivism, when has collectivism been warm? I asked you to look at my X account at Carl Jackson Show, at Twitter. I can't stand saying that. X at my Twitter account, and I mean, I was retweeting stuff literally from Cubans and Venezuelans, people that had gone through stuff, actually seen and lived through communism, had family members that were literally shot in the back of the head and dumped in mass graves. And we're sitting here saying we want that because that feels so nice and fuzzy. Man, Danny is making it clear. It's a, it's so crazy. We have become it. the more educated society has become, the dumber we've become because we don't know the basics. We've gone into these institutions where you've got a bunch of socialists and communists that are teaching our kids, and instead of teaching them reading, writing, and arithmetic and how to think critically, they're teaching them how to be social justice warriors. It just drives me insane. All right, real quick, let me wrap this up, and then I want to get back to Renee Nicole Good, who was justifiably shot by the ICE agent yesterday, and I will stand on that. And anybody that says differently or that they would have done differently, all of these Monday morning quarterbacks, all of these sidewalk cheerleaders that have never been involved in anything physically violent or anything physical, that are sitting here saying the ICE agent could have done this, could have done A, B, C, and D. Be quiet. You don't know what you would do when your life is on the line. You don't know what you would do. I honestly, 99.9% of the people that say they would have done something differently, or the ICE agent shouldn't have done that, or she wasn't trying to do this, if they were in front of that car and if they were trained to be a law enforcement officer, you know what they would have done? What he did, because that's what they would have been trained to do, and they would have been put in stressful situations where they trained to do exactly what he did when somebody breaks the law and interferes in law enforcement. If she would have simply stood still, put her car in park, not backed up, not rolled forward, not tried to flee the scene, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Was she trying to intentionally hit him? I don't know, but she did, and it doesn't matter because when the vehicle is right in front of me, you don't have time to think. You only have time to think or to react based upon your training, react based upon what your mental training, your physical training, and that's what that officer did. And frankly, I applaud him for being able to react so quickly. This officer as well, and I'm sure we'll get to video of this, he was hit and drugged down the road 50 feet before just this summer. The exact same thing happened to him. He could have lost his life then. Thank God he didn't. This time he experiences it again. Why is he experiencing it? Because you have the Tim Walsh of the world, you have the Hakeem Jeffries, you have the Jacob Fries, you have the Jasmine Crockett's, you have the Mamdanis demonizing law enforcement. Guys, if we don't have honest elections in the United States, if we don't have the rule of law inside of the United States, you don't have the freest, best country ever. What sets us apart from these other countries? Are we gonna be governed by the rule of law or the rule of man? What's the difference? The rule of law, these are the laws that are on the books. This is the Constitution. These are the laws statewide, citywide. We all follow these laws. Are we going to be governed by the rule of man? This is how I feel today, regardless of what the law says. I feel this way. I think this way. Okay, no. I don't care how you feel. What does the law say? What does the law say? That's the only way you bring peace and harmony to a country. That's one of the reasons why we've been so successful beyond our Judeo-Christian value system is the rule of law. And when people just despise law enforcement and the rule of law, what are you cheering for? You're cheering for a broken down nation? You're cheering for a nation to become a third world nation? Are you crazy? All right. So let me just finish this up on this food stuff. I'm almost out of the mood because now I'm back to this. Oh my. But all right. So one of the things they went from the food chart went from limiting to avoiding are the new guidelines. Again, the new guidelines take a stronger stand against foods that are consumed with sugar. Previous versions of the guide clearly included advice to limit the intake of foods with added sugar, but advice to avoid the use of added sugar was given only to those caring for infants and children. However, the new guidelines are more direct, quote, avoid sugar, sweetened beverages such as soda, fruit drinks, and energy drinks. There's more to that, but no need to focus there. Also, focus on proteins. The new guidelines are protein forward. The new framework, according to Kennedy, centers on protein and healthy fats, vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. Dr. Marty McCarty, the commissioner of the FDA, said the old guidelines had such a low protein recommendation that we are increasing that by 50% to 100%. Kids need protein, he says. The old protein guidelines were to prevent starvation and withering away. These new protein guidelines are designed for American kids to thrive, and they're based on science, not on dogma, so not on politics. Saturated fats are okay. It's another one. Previous guidelines pictured saturated fat as a source of concern, associating it with processed foods such as burgers, tacos, desserts, high fat meat, whole milk, and butter. The new guide maintains the same recommended intake of saturated fats, that is 10% of total calorie intake. It gives favorable mention to full fat yogurt, whole milk, and cheese. Macari says, quote, you don't need to tiptoe around fat and dairy. You don't need to push low fat milk to kids. All right. So this is good stuff to know. Taking on corporate interests, one change not stated in the new guidelines, but was mentioned by Kennedy when he explained the shifts in focus, the more direct stance against added sugar and processed foods. He said federal policy promoted and subsidized highly processed foods and refined carbohydrates and turned a blind eye to the disastrous consequences today. Kennedy said, asserting that this was done to protect corporate profit taking. And you know what? I think it's symbiotic. I don't. I I think it's symbiotic. I feel like it's what's going on in Minnesota. I believe the Minnesota fraud scheme. I think there's a quid pro quo in Minnesota. And I think the same thing was going on in the food industry. I think the same thing was going on with Dr. Anthony Fascist Fauci. Uh, Little wannabe dictator when he had power. At the NIH, I believe it was. I think there's a symbiotic relationship between a lot of these corporations and government. These guys will government will kick out grants or whatever it may be, or contracts with contractors, if you will, and then they expect some of that money to come back in campaigns. I think that it's my opinion. That's what you're going to find in Minnesota. Another thing, tackling the affordability crisis, the White House press secretary Caroline Levitt said the new policy updates were part of the Trump administration's effort to tackle the affordability crisis. She says, quote, when these guidelines are followed, Americans will be saving themselves thousands of dollars. A healthier America will lead to a more affordable America. So obviously that is a long-term thing. I can go ahead, but that is basically the gist of it. So the Trump administration making a lot of news. There was a really important story I want to bring to your attention before I circle back to all the scam work. I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping around, but I do think this is important too. Um, Here it is. Trump issues memoranda withdrawing the U.S. from 66 international organizations. All right, so you guys may have heard about this, including 31 UN entities, like the UN Framework on the Convention of Climate Change, the UN population. The article reads, excuse me, I just lost it. This is from the White House. UN population fund and the UN entity for the gender equality and the empowerment of women. The memorandum makes clear that the further withdrawals will continue. As the president says, quote, my review of further findings of the Secretary of State remains ongoing, close quote. From the memorandum, I hereby direct all executive departments and agencies to take immediate steps to effectuate the withdrawal of the United States from the organized organizations listed in Section 2 of this memorandum as soon as possible. So apparently there were over, I thought it was over, I thought it was over 60. Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. 66 international organizations. Basically, these organizations that are siphoning American money to enrich themselves. These organizations that are in these third world countries or these foreign countries that are basically socialists or quasi or pseudo socialists. And instead of just having a capitalistic society where they can thrive, inventions thrive, innovation thrives, individual liberty thrives, they want to just milk off the American teat, TEAT. Okay. And no. So President Trump says that's not going to happen. All right, guys, I promise. I promise. I promise. I promise. I will get into the details of this young lady, Renee Nicole Good, and again, get into the Minnesota fraud scheme because I don't want you to get distracted. I think the left wants to try to make Renee Nicole Good the next George Floyd. It's not going to happen because she's not black. I, I hate to be so blunt, but I'm just trying to be real with you. They're not going to let her be George Floyd because she's not black. We'll be back. Yeah. Hey guys, let me talk to you real quickly about my pillow. They've still got a deal going on all the way through March 1st of this year. So this year was pretty hard on my pillow. All right, but thank God for loyal listeners like you that they're still standing strong to show their appreciation. They're still offering their special Christmas savings exclusively for my listeners. Right now, you can get the children's Bible story pillow, a 5 pack for just $29.98. You get the My Slippers with the free bottle of their leather protectant spray for $39.98. Wow, that's a great deal. And a variety of blankets, comforters, duvets, starting as low as $25. Plus, there's a major blowout deal on the standard My Pillow. That's only $14.98 right now. All you have to do is visit mypillow.com and use a promo code Carl, Carl. I don't spell it like the communists, or call 800-858-0263. Again, that number, 800-858-0263. Use the promo code Carl to unlock these wholesale prices. That includes the standard My Pillow. Again, that's originally $49.98, now just $14.98 and $14.98. With queen sizes marked down to $18.99, and king sizes are only $1 more. My Pillow products come with a 10-year warranty, but they've just announced an incredible update. They now have a 60-day money back guarantee. Again, that's being extended all the way through March 1st. So go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Carl, Carl, or give them a call. 800-858-0263 is the number. All right. I got to breeze through this, guys. I got a lot to get to. I want to talk about individual rights as well as the Minnesota fraud scheme. And again, what the left wants you to do is they want you to be distracted. They want you to be distracted from the Minnesota fraud scheme. I think it's a quid pro quo. That is my opinion. So we'll get to that. Let's go ahead and roll it. Let me take a swig. Okay. Yeah. All right, so I'm growing increasingly convinced that what we've witnessed in Minnesota is basically quid pro quo, a quid pro quo between Tim Walz, Jacob Fry, and the like. Keith Ellison, who, by the way, the DOJ or who somebody just recommended charges. I believe it was Anna Paulina Luna recommended charges that they be indicted. Tim Walz and AG Keith Ellison. Now there's some news that maybe even Jacob Fry could have been, potentially have been somehow involved as well. His wife worked in a law firm that basically defended, counseled feeding our future staffers from feeding our future. And so a real interesting connection there. I don't have all the details in front of me, but I will hit you up on that later. All right. So going back to this New York Post poll article about Renee Nicole Good, she was the woman that was sadly, tragically, but justifiably shot. I say tragically because I don't get any pleasure in seeing a woman killed instantly, and frankly, for something so stupid and of her own making. It made no sense. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it made no sense. Some of the people involved, her lover, partner, have got to be sitting back and saying, why? This was so stupid. Her partner blamed herself, by the way. And sadly, this woman seemingly not grew up troubled, but apparently she was in a marriage before, married twice, where she was divorced. I believe she had a child in that relationship. Don't recall. And then she was married again, and sadly, her partner died in 2023. And her latest relationship is with she is in a lesbian relationship with this other woman. All right, but Renee Nicole Good, the article states, was the mom killed by the federal agent veering her car toward him. Was an anti-ICE warrior. This is what people were saying. She was part of a group of activists who worked to, quote, document and resist the federal immigration crackdown in Minnesota. And we'll be playing some videos for you as well. And honestly, I'm going back and forth. Video of this incident as well as video of the case of Minnesota fraud, making the case about Minnesota fraud, because what we're seeing, in my opinion, again, is a quid pro quo with these fraudsters. But let me give you more background on her. So Good moved to the city last year. So she moved to Minneapolis last year. She linked up with listen to this, anti ICE activists through her 6-year old son's charter school, which boasts that it puts, quote, social justice first. Okay, so not reading, writing, and arithmetic. I understand that people have their beliefs. You're free to take your kid wherever the heck you want to take your kid. But if I'm taking my 6-year-old kid to school, reading, writing, and arithmetic, critical thinking, those would be the top priorities. Maybe some art, some using his or her hand, painting some art, or preferably not on screens. All right. But the school boasted that it puts social justice first and involving kids in political and social activism. Okay. Okay. She was a warrior. She died doing what was right. A mother named Lisa, whose child attends the same school, told the Post at a growing vigil where Good was killed on Wednesday. Okay, so to this social justice mom, she didn't die doing what was right. She died breaking the law. It was so unnecessary. It was so stupid. I hate to see anybody die for something so stupid. Comply and you won't die. I mean, whether you're a black driver, whether you're a white driver, we have the rule of law in the United States of America. If you don't like the officer pulling you over, if you don't like the ICE agent, you know what? You live to fight another day. You take your case to court. That's the system that we have. And frankly, it's the best system in the world, whether you think so or not. We've just grown spoiled. Good and her wife, Rebecca, I don't believe women can have wives, but nonetheless, Good and her partner, Rebecca, were raising the child together, sent the boy to the Southside Family Charter School, a K through 5 academy that opened in 1972, which has from its inception been, quote, unabashedly dedicated to social justice education. So that's why Minneapolis are so crazy. That's why you get the protesters out there. From my understanding, says one woman, she was involved in social justice. We are a tight knit community, and a lot of parents are activists. All right, so this lady was a social justice warrior. Um, um, Basically a social justice warrior. She was leading the charge. This was a gym teacher who mentioned that, a former gym teacher at the school. I'm just going down the article, forgive me, from the New York Post. Similar coalitions cropped up all over the country, according to the Post, with activists using phone apps, whistles, car horns to warn neighborhoods when ICE shows up. Now, keep in mind, ICE, again, they're looking for the criminal illegal alien. That's who they're looking for. I know there's been, Department of Homeland Security. They've been making that a bit too broad, perhaps, where, Tom Homan has been the border czar, has been wanting to go after criminals first. I don't know if there's been a confrontation between he and Christy Nome, but it's clear that that was Tom Homan's mission. Go after the criminals first, remove the criminal illegal aliens first. People see you moving the criminal illegal aliens, you incentivize the others to leave. You make sure employers don't hire them. You make sure they can't get housing here. Guess what? People pack up and leave. She was trained against these ICE agents. Said this woman by the name of Lisa Renee Good was, what to do, what not to do. It's a very thorough training. So she was trained on ICE Watch. Did she fail the test? Because if she was trained to do what she did, she broke the law. She wasn't doing what was right. I'm sorry. To listen to commands, to know your rights, to whistle when you see an ICE agent. I know she was doing the right thing. I watched the video plenty of times, but I also know in my heart the woman she was doing everything right. Man, so this is so sad, and and she wasn't. And what makes me so concerned, are there more people out there that believe this nonsense? And it's just not true. I got to go back to my cut sheet here so that I can see what's going on, because I got a lot of cuts to play for you, but I honestly don't necessarily know which are which. So I want to get to those, and I want to get to individual property rights real quick. But let's go through some of the cuts, because I've got some of them outlined here. If we could go, I think we started with cut number 47, so I don't need to go back there. That was just Secretary of State Scott Bessent, who was talking about IRS. And I got to tell you this, I I am not. I love the fact that they're not sitting still when it comes to the fraud that we're seeing in the federal government. And Elon Musk tweeted about this. I mean, they're looking at $600 billion worth of like Medicaid welfare fraud or more that they're seeing. This is the stuff that Elon Musk was talking about. I don't like IRS agents going out there knocking on people's doors or armed to enforce law. I don't care if that's under Trump's administration or anybody else. IRS should not be doing that. We need to cut down the size of the IRS agents. All right, but let me take you to this because there was a hearing that occurred yesterday. Let's go to cut number 46. This was Representative Brandon Gill. This is really important. Again, I'm going back and forth between the shooting and also what the left wants to distract you from, which is the fraud that is taking place in Minnesota. This is Representative Brandon Gill grilling some people, Brandon Gill grilling some people on the Minnesota fraud. Cut number 46, please, Gabe.
There's a big difference between 54% and 7%, is there not?
Excuse me, sir. Could I answer the question?
Let me move on. We've got a lot of questions here. What percentage of Somali-headed households in Minnesota are on Medicaid?
I don't know.
It's 73%. Do you know what that number is for Minnesota native households?
Again, you're using the phrase Minnesota native households, but the majority.
The number is 18%. That's quite an astounding difference. I think we would agree.
Can I answer the question, please?
Let me ask you one more, and then we can go on to that. What percentage of Somali-headed households are on welfare in general?
I don't know.
It's 81%. What about, let me just ask you, after 10 years of being in the United States, what percentage of Somali immigrant households continue to be on welfare?
I don't know.
The number is 78%. So even after 10 years, 78% of Somali immigrant households continue to be on welfare. Do you know what that number is for native Minnesota-headed households?
Again, you're using the phrase,
non-Somali immigrant-headed households.
if I can just answer the question, when you're using the phrase native Minnesotans, the majority of Somali Minnesotans are as Minnesotan as any of us. They were born in the United States. It's only 8,000 of the 108,000 Somalis.
Nevertheless, the welfare usage is astoundingly different. Let me ask you again, does that make Minnesota stronger or weaker?
Again, I'd like the opportunity to answer the question here.
Go for
it. Again, the majority of Somali Minnesotans are born in the United States, as I understand it.
Okay, well, what percentage of working age Somalians who have been in the U.S. for 10 years or more, how many of them speak English very well?
I don't know.
About half. The answer is about half. That seems pretty low, doesn't it?
Again, I keep trying
to... It doesn't sound like something that makes our country stronger
Okay,
to me.
so, all right, well, we'll come back. We'll come back, and I want to go to the shooting after this. Why is this important? Because this is what the left wants to distract you from. We're witnessing one of the biggest fraud schemes, I think, in American history. We'll be back. All right, we can go right back into it. I think this will probably be the last one. Maybe I'll try to get out this property rights one too. Or maybe I'll, okay. All right, welcome back. So the reason why before the break I played had Gabe play Representative Brandon Gill. What's really important is the fraud. I believe there's a quid pro quo going on. That is my opinion. I believe that Tim Walz, Mayor Jacob Fry, AG Keith Ellison, Democrats in the state of Minnesota knowingly turned a blind eye to the fraud because I believe their campaign coffers were benefiting from it. I believe that there will be evidence to show that. I believe that's what's forthcoming or what's upcoming. I believe that's what's going to be exposed because it doesn't make sense. This fraud is too massive. When you have a state like Minneapolis that is literally, now it's worse in California, but the fact that they're even competing with California when it comes to fraud, California right near the southern border, I mean, with tons of illegals, it's absolutely insane. So you had Brandon Gill. Now I want to take you to the shooting because what the left wants to do is try to make Renee Nicole Good, They want to make her George Floyd. That's the goal. They want riots. This mayor, Jacob Fry, he wants riots. Remember, Democrats benefited in 2020 from urban neighborhoods being totally destroyed in the name of George Floyd. Now, I realize George Floyd is someone's family member, he's someone's son, but he was a straight up criminal and he was a straight up drug addict. That doesn't make him lesser than anybody in God's eyes. But if he didn't repent, he went to hell before he died. I hope not. I hope he had some time to repent. I really do. I wish that for everybody. But George Floyd was not a great person. All right, let's be real. Maybe he was kind to his girlfriend. I don't know. But he also held a pregnant chick up at gunpoint with a gun pressed to her pregnant belly. Not my definition of good guy. So now let's go to cut 30. Again, this is the shooting. This is what occurred in Minneapolis. I've already told you my stance, but this is tragic, completely avoidable, and completely justified. Cut 30, please.
There's a big difference between.
We can cut that one. Now there's other video out there. Frankly, on my X account, follow me on things social media at Carl Jackson Show, at the Carl Jackson Show, X, Instagram, and Facebook. You can check my social media account. I have different angles. There's a much clearer angle looking right behind the situation, where you can literally see and hear the commands being given. You can hear Renee Nicole Good say something, basically, but sadly, there is an ICE officer right off to the side, reaching his hands in, and there's someone literally right in front of her vehicle. And she should have just kept the car in park. They asked her to get out. She should have stepped out of the car. She had been trolling police officers all day, antagonizing the ICE agents all day, blocking and interrupting their affairs. I'm sorry, that's not the right thing to do. That's a very stupid thing to do. Her life in it, she's no longer her son is now orphaned. Hopefully the grandfather was saying that he's going to try to go there and get her son. Her son is now orphaned. 6 years old. His dad died in 2023. Now his mom, a social justice warrior, honestly defending illegal criminal aliens, shot and killed. Unnecessarily so. So let's go through some of these. And again, we'll go back and forth. So just forgive me. And we'll probably cut some of these videos short. Here's acting ICE director Todd Lyons, cut number 32, saying that ICE just arrested an illegal from Ecuador wanted for murder who was hiding in Tim Walsh's Minnesota. Cut number 32, please, Gabe.
Yeah, Brian, if you look at what we've done, we've undertaken the largest, not only is it the largest immigration enforcement action ever, but in the ICE's history, but it's also the largest criminal enforcement action we've ever taken. Just look at what we arrested yesterday, right? You have somebody from Ecuador, who went to Minnesota to hide in plain sight. He was let in under the last administration's policy in 2022 when he entered, even though he was convicted of extortion, kidnapping, and strangulation, served 10 years in prison, was wanted for murder. Here he is hiding in plain sight in Minnesota. So It's not buffoonery. We're out there doing what we're supposed to do, and we're out there making sure that we're taking the...
You get the point there. I want to move to cut number 33. The Department of Homeland Security has actually surged law enforcement. I heard Paul Morrow, Fox News, yesterday saying, as far as ICE is concerned, they need to double down there. They need to have 200 agents out there arresting people that get out of line as far as protests are concerned. And then the other, ICE agents that are out there, operating and arresting the criminal illegal aliens. I totally agree with that. But let's go to cut number 33. I want you to hear these astronomical numbers of the criminal alien element that ICE was arresting, criminal illegal alien element that ICE was arresting inside of Minneapolis. This is cut number 33. Por favor, Gabe.
The amount of fraud in Minnesota is unprecedented. It's incredible what we've found. And we did surge operations there the last 48 hours. We've sent 2,000 more ICE officers, HSI officers, individuals there to help get to the bottom of it. But what we're finding is not only people who've come into this country illegally, but they've perpetuated crimes on people. Then they've stolen the American citizens' money and they've put it in their own pockets and then the pockets of other individuals that are here, businesses, individuals that bought luxury homes and took vacations, and they all did it using somebody else's money and money that should have been used to help people who really was supposed to benefit from these programs. Medicaid individuals that were supposed to get help for developmental services, that were handicapped individuals, people who had autism that needed services, and they didn't get it because these criminals were out there stealing the money and instead benefiting themselves.
All right, so we can cut it there. So 1,500 people, crooks, creeps, murderers, rapists, pedophiles, gang members, fraudsters. This is who Renee Nicole Good died for. See, they were framing the ICE agents that was trying to clean up the community and make it safer for her son. She died for nothing. That's what's so tragic. That's what's so sad. Feeling good about herself. She died for nothing. I almost hate to say those words because I feel horrible for her kid. I feel horrible for her. I feel horrible for her. She thought she was doing the right thing. Meanwhile, her politicians are crooked as all get out. You have a community of fraudsters, the Somali community, overwhelmingly, seemingly in that community in Minneapolis, involved with a quid pro quo with government officials. We turn a blind eye. We make you rich. You vote for us. I mean, this is insane. Let's go to cut number 40. Let's go to cut number 42. This is important because I'm glad to see the Trump administration isn't backing down and isn't backing away from the ICE agent. This is extremely important. They're going to continue with the operations. They've continued with the operations. The IRS, I believe the ICE were in. They were going, and FBI were going through offices in that area still, even after the shooting. Just clearing out information, a bunch of false documents. All right, let's go to cut number 42, please, Gabe.
Let me be clear. President Trump and his entire administration stand fully behind the heroic men and women of ICE and will always uphold law and order in the United States of America. The deadly incident that took place in Minnesota yesterday occurred as a result of a larger, sinister, left-wing movement that has spread across our country, where our brave men and women of federal law enforcement are under organized attack. Right now, immigration and customs enforcement officers are facing a 1,200% increase in assaults, a 3,200% increase in vehicle rammings, and an 8,000% increase in death threats. ICE agents are faithfully enforcing federal law to protect the safety of the American people by removing criminal illegal aliens from our country.
Stop it there.
Which is exactly.
I just want again. What did she die for? And then look at what ICE agents. These people. These aren't partisan hacks. These people go to work just like you do. Their work just happens to be different. They're law enforcement officers. I don't know where you work, but you go to job. You don't go to job unless you work for the DNC or the RNC. You're not going to work to be a political hack. You're going there to do your job and to make a living, to take care of your family. They're doing the same thing. Their job just happens to be more heroic than most other jobs, but that's it. And now they're under attack. We're trying to keep us all safe. It's just insane. We'll be back. All right, I'll do a last segment on. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I want to talk about property rights. and get to that, I felt like there was something else that I needed to make mention of because there was a lot of news that broke, honestly, right before I came on. And of course it would, which is good. I think it never stops. Republicans, actually, all I need to do is check X. That's the one thing about Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. The news is constantly popping there. Let's see. Okay. Okay. All right. We can go ahead. I'm ready for the last one. All right, welcome back to the program. So, just a couple of updates. I do want to make mention. I haven't had time to talk about it, but obviously the Venezuela Trump commandeering and the United States commandeering the oil tankers. I was really pleased with that. I think this is an extremely good thing, making sure that the Western Hemisphere is strengthened. During the Iraq War, Afghanistan War, obviously there was a very singular focus on the Middle East, it seems. And meanwhile, you had China with their Belt and Road Initiative, taking advantage of America, um, taking advantage of us because we were out fighting mostly in the Middle East, and China was encroaching in the Western Hemisphere and trying to make deals with all of these South American countries with the Belt and Road Initiative and all this kind of stuff, and also oil. China needs oil. Oil is the lifeblood of life. Period. Fossil fuel. That's why these greenies want to get rid of it. So I'm very happy that Trump stood up to Russia boldly. No, you're not going to take this oil. Yes, we are going to seize this oil. We're going to keep it. Trump wants oil to be at $50 per barrel. That it's about at 56 now. So gas prices are very good under the Trump administration, unless you're living in commie California and places like that where they intentionally still import fuel for oil from like the craziest places. I think where do they import fuel? I forget, but it's insane. They're just complete hypocrites when it comes to California and all the taxes and regulation, all to try to kill the gas and oil industry, which is just completely stupid because you need all of that energy, and even in order to go green. So that it's all a complete scam. Now, um, also, you had 17 Republicans that voted along with House Democrats. It hasn't gone to the Senate as of yet. Call your senators, all right? Call your senators and make sure that the expansion of Obamacare socialized medicine does not go on. You're talking about 7% of the population that can actually find better healthcare plans if money is given back to them, all right, instead of paying healthcare insurance companies to get richer and richer and richer and not providing any better healthcare services. You're paying more. It's insane. We're extending the subsidies, which tells us that Obamacare is not affordable, but basically we're going to pay the healthcare insurance companies more, not your doctors more. It's just the craziest thing ever. When we can have affordable health care, we can have associated health plans where people that were like me, that are self-employed or whatever, those are basically the people that are the 7%, 7 to 10% of people that are in the Obamacare markets. You may have some poor people in the Obamacare markets, but a lot of those people could have just gone on Medicaid, all right, state-run Medicaid. They could have expanded that in states, sent out bulk checks from the federal government. But they wanted to socialize medicine. Now, let me get to this. This is really quick. I want to take you back down a trip, if you will, to cut number 4. This is Che Weaver. Man, Danny was out again saying some stuff, but Che Weaver, if we could go back to her, is basically I think she's the tenant, not the tenant czar. I forget what you would call her, but she's part of the Ma'am Danny administration, and this was on YouTube. Cut number 4, Gabe. Apparently, this was YouTube, in 2021. Now she's a part of the Mamdani administration. Turns out she's a nepo baby too. Cut number 4.
I think the reality is that for centuries we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good, and we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently, and it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
Okay. All right. So that is his what Mamdani's tenant pick. They want rent control. They want to be able to seize properties. If you happen to be a POC, all right, not a piece of crap. That stands for a person of color, especially if you're white and you worked hard, for the American dream. You bought a property. Then she and Mamdani want to be able to take that from you. Now, Mamdani is rich. He's a spoiled brat. His father is a professor, wealthy professor. His mother is a Hollywood producer. Her mother is apparently wealthy. A professor at Vanderbilt University has a home in Tennessee worth $1.6 million. In Tennessee, worth $1.6 million. So she's got some bank. So these are people that have gone to college, been brainwashed in the ideas of communism, and they just want to run everything. They want the state to literally run everything. They want to take over the means of production. They want to tell you what to do. Now, we live in a Judeo-Christian nation. This is what sets us apart. Oh, Carl, I don't believe in religion. You should, or you should at least respect the fact that you live in a Judeo-Christian nation, because that's what makes this country so great. There's a book that I always reference or often reference, Understanding the Times, the Religious Worldviews of Our Day and the Search for Truth, David A. Noble. It's an older book, but I encourage you to use it or to purchase it if you can still find it online as a reference book. I do. But it breaks down the different worldviews. All right. And the Christian worldview when it comes to private property is this. This person argues, or he argues, that under private property, Christians who adhere, let's just say Americans to adhere to socialism, claim that private property encourages greed and envy, and that public ownership would remove much temptation to sin. Is this compatible with Scripture? Well, obviously not. The commandment, thou shalt not steal, is the clearest declaration of the right to private property in the Old Testament. So, for those of you that are Christian, for those of you that are Jewish, and you believe in this nonsense, the taking of private property, that's crazy. Now, isn't it greed for someone like Mamdani, for someone like that chick, Che Weaver, whatever her name is, to want to take your property? That's not greed. It's amazing to me. So you bust your butt, you work hard, you make a down payment, you pay your monthly mortgage. That's greed. But saying, I don't like the fact that you worked hard. I want to take what you have because I'm jealous. That's not greed. Give me a break. Number 2, private ownership and stewardship of property is assumed to be the proper state of affairs throughout the Bible. Deuteronomy 8, Ruth chapter 2, Isaiah 65:21 through 22, Jeremiah 32:42 through 44, Micah 4:1 through 4, Luke 12:13 through 15, Acts 5:1 through 4, Ephesians 4:28. E. Calvin Beisner demonstrates this best by asking, why does Scripture require restitution, including multiple restitution in cases of theft, even if paying restitution requires selling oneself into slavery? Exodus 22. Clearly, Scripture requires this because God has bestowed on mankind the right to private property. Number 3, the right to property stems from our duty to work. After casting man out of Eden, God decreed that mankind must face a life of toil in Genesis 3:17 through 19. But God, in his mercy, allowed that men who consciously adhere to this duty may be rewarded with private property. Proverbs 10:4 states, lazy hands make a man poor, but diligent hands bring wealth. Private property is a godly thing. Number 4, further, since God grants man private ownership of certain aspects of his creation, man becomes accountable to God for the way in which he uses his property. In God's wonderfully intricate plan, the duty to work gives rise to the right to property, which in turn creates the duty to use the property wisely. Beisner states biblical stewardship views God as owner of all things. Psalms 24:1, and man individually and collectively as his steward. Every person is accountable to God for the use of whatever he has. This is why I don't like collectivism. See, what collectivism tries to do is get rid of individual accountability, individual responsibility. If you didn't make it, it's not your fault. That's just the way the system is. That's not true, because people have made it and have risked their life in America, achieved the American dream. And maybe you haven't achieved what you consider the American dream. The point is, you can't go anywhere else to achieve anything close to the American dream. I mean, this is crazy. Um, every person's responsibility as a steward is to maximize the owner's return on his investment by using it to serve others. Matthew 25:14-30, that's the parable of the talents. God clearly displays that a man needs to work. A man needs to labor. A man is responsible. God has invested in him, and God expects a return in for that investment. Number 5, this use of private property to serve others can only occur in a society in which property is privately owned. Publicly owned property destroys man's sense of responsibility to use his possessions wisely. And we see that all the time when you have areas that are mostly rentals compared to people that own, because they're obviously going to take care of their stuff more. It's as simple as that. So, ma'am, Danny is a communist, but I just gave you the reasons why you should be a capitalist and love private property. God bless you.